In the middle of a war, soldiers receive an order, hand in the newest armor, and go back to the gear their grandfathers wore. This is not fiction. It is a real Roman story. For 200 years, Roman legions were locked inside Lorica segmentata, a plated armor that became a symbol of their power. And then it stopped. Production was shut down. The know-how faded away. The strongest army in the world went back to chainmail. The answer to why is not found on the battlefield. It is found in rust, money, and one fatal engineering mistake. You could hear a legion long before you could see it on the horizon. Not the clang of steel on steel, not the thud of boots. A hiss. Thousands of rings rubbing against each other with every step, creating a steady, snake-like hum. For centuries, the Roman army that conquered the Mediterranean did not wear plates. It wore a net. Lorica hamata, classic chainmail, was a legionary's second skin. Julius Caesar conquered Gaul while looking at the world over a shoulder wrapped in woven rings. Romans valued the hamata for one simple reason: it lasted forever. One shirt could serve for half a century, passed from father to son. After a battle, an old centurion would sit by the fire, take cutters, a coil of wire, and in an hour stitch the damage back together. But that comfort had a price. Chainmail is heavy. 10, 12, sometimes 14 kilograms of iron hung like dead weight.
And that weight sat almost entirely on the soldier's shoulders. By the end of a long march, a legionary's back felt like it was breaking. Then there was the physics problem. Chainmail is excellent against cuts. A sword slides, a spear can snag, but it does not absorb the force of a blow. It is flexible. When a Germanic warrior struck with a club or a stone, the rings might stay intact while the bones underneath turned to fragments. That is blunt force trauma behind armor. Legionaries could be taken out with smashed shoulders without a single drop of blood. Rome needed a cuirass that could take a hit rigidly. But the biggest reason for the revolution, the one heroic stories rarely mention, was scalability. After the civil wars, Emperor Augustus had to equip a professional standing army. Nearly 150,000 heavy infantrymen needed protection, here and now. And that is when Rome realized something. The old, reliable chainmail shirt was a logistics dead end. Making one hamata took hundreds of hours of handwork. You had to draw wire by the kilometer, coil it, cut 30 or 40,000 rings, and then rivet every single one by hand. One craftsman could spend 2 months on one shirt. It was jewelry-level labor, and you could not speed it up. Augustus needed mass output. Engineers offered a solution we would call an assembly line. Why struggle with wire? Take an iron sheet, roll it, cut it into strips, bend it on a form. Stamping plates scales beautifully. Put enslaved labor on the bellows, the hammers, and the assembly. Now you can turn out hundreds of sets per week. That is how segmentata was born. It did not appear only for protection. It answered a brutal demand of empire. We need armor faster than we can lose it.
And it turned out to be lighter. A properly assembled segmentata weighed around 9 kilograms, and because it was rigid, it spread weight across the whole torso, not just the shoulders. It looked like a clear victory, but the first real experience showed something else. The engineers had created a powerful, very temperamental monster.
Lorica segmentata looks like a single solid shell only from a distance. Up close, it feels like a complex machine built from metal and leather. At its core is a laminar principle. Horizontal steel strips overlapped like shingles. It was an attempt to combine opposites. A rigid cuirass protects, but you cannot bend in it. Chainmail bends, but it lets the impact go through. Segmentata tried to do both. The metal strips hung on internal leather straps. When the legionary leaned forward, the strips slid apart. When he straightened, they closed into one continuous shield. When a club struck, energy was spent on friction between plates and on elastic deformation. The armor worked like the leaf spring on a heavy wagon. It ate the impact. But the design meant nothing without the right material. The secret was in the structure. Modern analysis suggests the core of a Roman plate stayed soft and tough, giving it resilience. The outer surface, however, was enriched with carbon, case-hardened by heating in charcoal. The result was a sandwich, a hard shell with a ductile core. The main headache for engineers was the fasteners. The early segmentata, the so-called Calcresi type, was a monument to over-engineering. Hundreds of tiny bronze loops and buckles riveted onto iron. On a museum stand, it looks elegant. In real life, it was a nightmare. A soldier had to secure dozens of small fittings with frozen fingers in mud. Bronze loops snapped, rivets popped out. The engineering imagination outpaced the material technology. Rome held heavy steel sheets together with hardware better suited to sandals. The problem surfaced the moment legions entered the damp climate of the north, where mist eats iron faster than any sword.
If you think a soldier's main enemy is the man in front of him, you have never cleaned equipment after a month in swamps. Segmentata was a blessing in battle, but hard labor in daily life. The first enemy was chemistry. Iron plates and bronze rivets, in wet weather, created a reaction. Iron began to rot not from the outside, but from the inside, around each rivet. Loops simply fell off. That produced an almost obsessive maintenance culture. Chainmail could be tossed into a barrel of sand, rolled for half an hour, and it looked nearly new. Segmentata did not forgive you like that. You had to take it apart, clean every plate with pumice, oil it, but do it without soaking the leather straps inside, because grease made leather soften and tear. And you repeated that after every rainy day. And even perfectly oiled armor could hurt you if you wore it wrong. Any armor needs padding.
Wearing chainmail on bare skin is pointless. A blow will still break bones. But segmentata without an underlayer will literally take your skin off. It has rigid, sharp edges. After 5 kilometers on the march, the metal rim can cut into your collarbones to the bone. The secret ingredient was the subarmalis, a thick quilted underarmor with padded shoulder rolls and hanging strips, teruges. It worked like cushioning, lifting the metal away from the body. Without a well-fitted, good-quality subarmalis, segmentata could cripple its owner before the battle even began. Now imagine that soldier's life. You carry a complicated mechanism. You spend hours polishing it. You hate the endless straps. But then the day of battle comes. You watch a barbarian axe bounce off your comrade's shoulder, leaving only a dent. And you understand. Yes, this piece of iron is worth every hour of suffering. And soon, everyone would need that chance. On the horizon appeared Dacia. When Emperor Trajan led the legions across the Danube, the Roman machine met a weapon that could open almost any defense. The falx, a two-handed scythe-like blade with the cutting edge on the inside of the curve. A falx strike carried terrifying energy. Its hooked beak could punch through helmets and reach over the top of a shield. But the Dacians quickly noticed segmentata's weakness. It protected the torso beautifully, but left the arms exposed. One swing, and a legionary lost an arm. Rome reacted immediately. They did not reinvent the wheel, they had adapted what already existed. Gladiator schools had long used the monica, an articulated metal sleeve. In the army, only a few had worn it before. In Dacia, the monica became a mass standard. Right there in the field, smiths began riveting protection for the right arm.
The manica plates overlapped, so the arm could bend while still creating a steel barrier. Lorica segmentata stopped being just a vest. It became the core of a modular system. Need more protection? Attach a manica. Need to cover the legs? Put on greaves. Romans traded mobility for invulnerability, turning the infantryman into a walking tank. Trajan's legions ground Dacia down. But it was Trajan's column which captured that triumph, that created the biggest myth. Films have trained us to expect the picture. Thousands of clones in identical shining shells. The truth? No. Lorica segmentata was never a standard uniform for 100% of soldiers. It was a marker of the elite, the heavy infantry of the legions, Roman citizens. Auxiliaries, cavalry, archers, light infantry, did not wear segmentata. They needed flexibility,
and plates restrict movement. Auxiliary troops fought in chainmail and scale armor. Even inside a legion, equipment was mixed, veterans in the newest plates, recruits in grandfather's chainmail. Rome did not discard gear until it fell apart. So why does Trajan's column show everyone in plates? Propaganda. The sculptor needed a clear visual line between us, the Romans, and our allied troops, so all legionaries were shown in plates, and auxiliaries in chainmail. It is an artistic code, not a documentary record.
And here's the funny part. Even our idea of what this armor looked like was wrong for a long time. The truth did not appear in offices. It appeared in a pile of rubbish. By the way, about discoveries, many people imagine archaeologists finding complete suits of armor on battlefields. In reality, history is often written from rubbish pits. If you want more breakdowns of everyday military life, hit like, and let's open the box.
In the year 1964, at the Roman fort of Corbridge, archaeologists uncovered a rotten wooden chest buried under the floor of a workshop. Inside was rusted iron, a stash. Someone had hidden 12 partly disassembled suits of armor, planning to return. He never did. The Corbridge hoard changed everything. It turned out we had been reconstructing segmentata incorrectly. Armor researcher Russell Robinson studied the find and saw brilliant simplicity. By the 2nd century, the Romans had finally refined the design, the Corbridge type. They threw out the fragile tiny buckles. Everything was held by leather thongs and clever brass hooks. Fewer parts, more reliability. The balance had been found. It sounds like a perfect ending. Copy it and rule the world. But later finds, the Newstead type, showed deterioration. Parts became rougher and larger. Hinges vanished. Primitive clamps appeared. The armor became hard to put on without help. Chasing lower cost, Rome began to kill quality, and soon the technology disappeared completely.
The crisis of the 3rd century hit Rome harder than any plague. Inflation, civil wars, but most importantly, the complex logistics system broke. There is no contradiction with the beginning of the story. Yes, chainmail takes a long time to make. You sit for months with cutters and wire. But it is a low technology. One blacksmith in almost any village can make and repair it. He does not need blueprints or strict standards. Segmentata, however, was high technology. To make good rolled plate, you needed large workshops, charcoal, advanced furnaces, and skilled specialists who knew heat treatment secrets. When the imperial economy began to crumble, keeping those factories running became impossible. Skilled workers scattered. Know-how was lost. Making good segmentata became something Rome simply could not do, and bad segmentata was worse than cloth. Tactics changed too. Enemies became faster. Powerful cavalry became more common. The scutum, the big Roman shield, became oval and flatter, no longer covering the legs. Segmentata left the lower belly and thighs exposed. In an infantry shield wall, that was acceptable. In the new, mobile style of war, it became a hole in the defense. A long chainmail shirt protected the body down to the knees. By the 4th century, the circle closed. Complex, expensive, factory-dependent plate armor gave way to primitive but reliable, repairable chainmail. Rome simplified itself to survive.
Lorica segmentata was a peak of armor craft, advanced, relatively light, and extremely dependent on infrastructure. It could exist only while a powerful state machine could support it. As soon as the empire grew ill, the most complex system failed first. Romans returned to chainmail not because they became foolish, but because they proved an old truth. When factories collapse, the winner is what you can fix with your own hands. This armor did not disappear because barbarians defeated it. It became a victim of economic collapse. Look today at the most advanced technology that requires factory service, and at simple solutions that still work in mud. History has a way of repeating itself.